Hello and welcome from this new release of Xen Orchestra 5.93. There is many things to tell that are related to obviously this release, but also let's say side announcements that are very exciting, and I will be very happy to present you all of them. So let's first all about the project and community living around Xen Orchestra, like at CPNG, Vates, and so on. So we're back from the Cloudfest. So if you want to understand what we announced and what happened there, it's kind of a really big event happening in Germany. So we were there. We had a booth for 3 days. It's a pretty large event. We had the opportunity to discuss with many providers that were or vendors that were at this place. So really nice talks. We made a lot of demos and so on. So feel free to take a look on our blog posts. And obviously, I will, spend some time just to explain you a bit the three big announcements we made recently. The first one is we got our first OEM partnership with a server manufacturer, and 2CRSI is our first OEM server manufacturer that will integrate XCP-ng as pre-installed inside their Mona series. So basically, those servers will be available to be purchased directly with XCP-ng into it. We are now working on getting the configuration ironed, and so for that, we need your feedback. So if you go on the blog post, you will see a registration form that will be useful to understand a bit more what you are expecting for those machines, the ideal configuration for you, so we could have them into the catalog, and so you will be able to order them directly with XCP-ng. What's great is, when you start to have one first, server manufacturer getting your solution, then it helps to get the others. So that's a great first start for us. And that's, I think, really in our target on helping you to get something that is just working out of the box. Also, XCP-ng works very well in OEM mode where you boot the machine and it asks you for the root password. So it's very simple to purchase it and get it working. Obviously, it's also mean that we'll have a certified hardware, not just compatible, like we have a hardware compatibility list, but it will be also certified with more integration coming and so on. So keep an eye on this. More exciting news regarding this integration between Vates and 2CRSI and XCP-ng. Let's move on to another new partner. The new partner this time not on the hardware side, but on the hosting provider slash cloud provider. It's Ionos. It's a big European selling all around the world about private cloud, renting machines, and so on. And we are working together to also build you the offer that will be the best match for you. So for that, same story then with 2CRSI. It would be ideal if you're interested, if you have a project for, let's say, get your XCP-ng hosted or in a private cloud directly at Ionos infrastructure. Let us know, register inside the blog post so we can contact you with both Ionos and us. So that would be interesting for you because we'll have both our point of view and their point of view, so we could build the best offer. So the future is ahead with them, and more feedback means more chances to go fast to provide the exact offer that would be the best one. And the last announcement of the week we had during our Cloudfest event was the being official with our technological collaboration with Ampere Computing. So for those who do not know who is Ampere Computing, they are, I would say, now probably the leader on the market on getting ARM-based servers for the data center. That's a great collaboration because it will help us to get XCP-ng at some point running on the machines. So it's not for tomorrow. Obviously, there's a lot of work. Expect some announcements in a week or so regarding Xen working on it, but having the hypervisor working on the machine is one thing, but getting the entire stack is another thing. But at least being able to work with them to get the results and even to get improvement with what they do inside the chip and to use it into our platform, because we do the platform, we decide, we call the shots, is a great partnership for the future. So also keep an eye on that. That will be very interesting. Another unrelated Xen Orchestra announcement, half related, let's say. So we wanted to be clear that we are supporting VEEAM as a backup solution for XCP-ng if you use their VEEAM agent inside the VMs. So it's already a first step. We started to discuss with them if they wanted to have another integration for the VM backup, but for now, it's better to use Xen Orchestra for the agentless backup of your VMs. And if you need application aware, like for your MS SQL or Exchange server or thing like that, you want them to be aware to restore whatever specific bit inside this application, Veeam agent can work. We'll also announce in the next week another pretty huge backup provider that is compatible with us. So stay tuned on that. And if you really, really are a hardcore fan of Veeam, there's a link in our documentation uh, pushing to other forums. So if you want to express, your requirements to have it fully agentless, let them know. They're aware there's some requests, so feel free to talk to them. Let's switch now to Xen Orchestra release. So on the first item that we usually talk about is the backup. So this month, no new features, but the S3 backup and the encryption capabilities are now fully operational. To be fair, they were available since years, but we really wanted to be sure that everything was working pretty fine. And after few years without any problem identified, despite we got thousands of users all around the world using it, we declare it production ready. So now if you were just not sure to use because it wasn't officially production ready, now you can use S3 and or encryption for your backups. You can use both, by the way. If you back up to an S3 parts in the world where you don't have any control on it, then you could use encryption. And so keep the key just on your site, and nobody will be able to decipher your backups. Let's move on to VMware to Vates, our conversion utility able to import VMware VMs directly into XCP-ng through Xen Orchestra. It's been up since 1 year and a half, so it's not new. It works rather well. To be fair, we were discovering, subtle different configuration that you could import from VMware. But after months on feedback from our users, because this feature is entirely free, we managed to make it really, really stable to also have the warm migration capability. And the last blocker for us was getting the warm capability for recent VMware version, because in very short, they had a lock on the storage file that we wanted to export on the snapshots. So one way to solve it is a way that we just managed to add this month, is to, in fact, if you can, move your VM disk on VMware side to an NFS data store, and then mount this data store as a backup repository inside Xen Orchestra. And then finally, if you do that, the import will automatically detect it, and being able to make a faster and warm migration even on a really recent version of VMware. So that's a big plus. And obviously, if you have any questions on that, feel free to let us know on the forum or buy a support ticket if you have a subscription. Moving on to the high availability. So it's not new per se. This feature exists into XCP-ng since years, but now we exposed it into Xen Orchestra, so it's easier to turn it on. Just keep in mind that high availability is a complex beast, and you really need to understand how it works before just blindly enable it. For example, if you have a not great network or storage, then ironically, the HA will decrease your availability, because it's really meant to work on a stable system. Because as soon as you got something down, it will manage to shut down the host, start the VM on the other one, and so on. So if you have, I don't know, just a 2-3 minutes shutdown in your network on a regular basis, maybe HA is not really a good idea. So feel free to test and to give us feedback if needed, but otherwise HA works pretty well. But extra feedback is obviously welcome. Switching to XO6 and XO Lite, as you know, we are working on both projects at the same time, since they're using now similar components. I mean, we put all the new components into the same library, so we could reuse them regardless it's inside XO Lite or XO6. So we managed to make many new components. So as you maybe know, since last month, we announced publicly the URL of our design system for XO. And so you could read and see all the let's say templates and designs that will be used, but now we spend a lot of time to make the actual components to be used in Vue.js, which is the new framework we use for XO Lite and XO6. So there's many new components we've written that are ready. So I would say that's a lot of work, but it's moving forward pretty great, and we are entering the next step where we could integrate those components directly into the new UI. So expect pretty cool announcement next month about XO Lite and XO6. And now, load balancer. So, as you are maybe aware, the load balancer is the capability through a Xen Orchestra plugin to shuffle your VMs around for whatever you need to, spread the load, balance the load, and so on. We added a new option called balance vCPUs. So, this new options allows you when things are pretty quiet, like the overall pool usage is below 40%, to be sure that all your vCPUs are spread on the most number of physical CPUs available. So this means if you enable this option, it will prepare your entire infrastructure to have the most of the performances from your hardware when you will need it. Obviously, we do not shuffle that around when you have huge load, because moving VMs around, even if we do that in live migration, will have an impact on the CPU load. Moving a VM, moving the memory of the VM and landing into another CPU costs some performances. So that's why we want to do it when it's pretty calm. But you can, it's a fully optional thing. You can enable it if you want to test. Feedback welcome as usual. But we think that could, really helpful if you want to really extract most of the juice from all your CPUs you have in a cluster/pool. And now switch to the USB pass-through. So it was requested to expose that into the UI. It was already available through the CLI, but we delivered that so you could directly see inside your host's view into the advanced tab. You got a physical USB device visible, and if you enable them, it means they will be ready to be shared. And then in the VM advanced view, you will be able to create a vUSB device. And when it's created, you can just start the VM or restart it if it was shut down to detect the device. But feel free to know that if you unplug the device, that will work. You could live unplug a device, but you can't live plug it. So if you live unplug it, then if you want to plug it back, you need to stop and start the VM again. So that's a node limitation for now. But still, it's convenient to have a live unplug, because we could manage to, if you want to do a backup, to unplug your USB device, the time to do the backup, shut down the VM, start it again, and then your vUSB device is back online. And now time to switch to the project Pyrgos Kubernetes cluster with few clicks capability in Xen Orchestra. So we didn't provide any news in the last few months because we were working on something a bit better in the way to use it. So now, instead of using apt inside our template to deploy Kubernetes, we are directly relying on the right binaries, and we know all the compatibilities between all versions. So even if there's many Kubernetes versions you could choose, you have now the guarantee that they will directly be accessible and work out of the box when you deploy your Kubernetes cluster. We also use the opportunity to update many, let's say, dependencies inside those dedicated VMs to run Kubernetes, like containerd, CNI plugins, critctl, runc, and all of those, also addresses some vulnerabilities, like some CVs that are now fixed because of and thanks to these updates. So feel free to test it again. It should work pretty well. And now we also made a lot of work behind the scene so we could move forward for the next features, like displaying your cluster you created in Xen Orchestra in a dedicated view, and in the future do some life cycle with it. So that's it for the biggest highlights. But now let's discuss about the nice enhancements we made inside the existing UI. So that's our Misc category. And the first point in the agenda is we switch for the numeric dates to the ISO 9601 formats. Because it's a lot better at many different things. Like, for example, it's easier to sort, to deal with, it's universal, and so on. So I think that many people, most of you will like it, because it's a lot easier to deal with. And again, from many points of views, there is no more confusion. regardless the language you are using inside the UI and so on. So if you want to learn more about these ISO formats, I put a link to Wikipedia article explaining a bit more about it and all the advantages of using that. Then we managed to have some more automation during VM creation. If your VM template requires VTPM, like the Windows 11 one, Xen Orchestra will automatically create the VTPM device directly. So there's nothing you have to deal yourself. So note that VTPM is only working with XCPNG 8.3. And if you want some information on when, it should be before this summer. At least we're working to release the official version before this summer. So stay tuned. At least we hope to target before July for it. So soon enough. Moving on to OTP, so one-time password. You can enable it into Xen Orchestra, but now we got a mandatory registration of your OTP to be sure you won't lock yourself out. So as soon as you decide to add it, you will have a modal window that will tell you to register, to validate the code, and so on. This way, we are sure that you got everything configured before, for example, disconnect your account. And if you forgot to add it before disconnect, you will be lock out yourself. And with this new workflow, it can't happen anymore. So that's pretty convenient. Also, we extended OTP support to the JSON RPC API. So if you use XO CLI, you can now pass the OTP argument to be sure to rely on OTP to log on the CLI or JSON RPC API. Note that the REST API isn't affected because it's already using tokens, and to generate a token first, you need to be connected. So if you enable OTP, then you have to be connected first to generate the token. So that's why REST API is great, because there is really low complexity API to do whatever you do. We also made various enhancements, like how to deal with your tags when you want to add a color and things like this. Before, it was kind of a bit hard to see your previous tags and so on. So now it's a lot easier. We also added some checks in the UI, like if you use a VM with UEFI, while the VM the template is not made to use UEFI, you will have a warning message. It's just a warning. You could, bypass it, but it's stored inside the recommendation on the VM template. If you want to set up a default storage repository, it's also easier. It was already possible in the UI, but it was like just hovering on top of the ESR and then find the icon and click on it. So we made it also into the advanced tab with something that is visible, always visible. So it's easier to manage. So that was due to some feedback from users, and we agreed that it was not optimal. So now it is. We also managed to, if you change the MTU, so again, big warnings, changing the MTU in general doesn't worth it. But if you want to do it, in general, you need to reboot or unplug all the VIFs and PIFs you have into using this network. But now Xen Orchestra can do it for yourself. So it's a lot faster if you want to change it. Other small improvements, but still important ones. Now the console view, you could get a percentage of zoom, so you could directly go to the percentage you like instead of just using the slider. So it's also more precise and so on. Tokens, authentication tokens also now are displayed with the last use date and the IP address. So it's very convenient to check if there's any weird behavior with your tokens. You could revoke tokens and so on. So that's really nice to have that inside, the logs view. It allows you to really being able to be sure nothing is going wrong with the tokens, the way they are used, and so on. And the two last points, the ability to delete protected templates, those basically bundled templates. There's some use cases when you want to do that. So it wasn't possible before in Xen Orchestra. You'd have to go to the CLI. Now it's possible. And also a kind of a nice improvement on the backup repository reported size. We had some issues displaying very large repositories, but now it's fixed. So it's not usual we put our bug fixes there, but this one was kind of annoying. We told people to just ignore the incorrect size, but so at some point we decided let's fix it, and now it's fixed. So as usual, if you want to go to the changelog to also see all the bug fixes and various things that are too minor to be discussed here, feel free to do so, and see you next month then. Hopefully you like all the new improvement we made, and be sure that next month will be also some cool announcements regarding the future of the UI for XO6 and XO Lite. So thanks for watching this podcast or video, depending when you are, and see you around. Bye bye.